I feel it so from head to toe, leading and feeding my body. I stick to the code, I never fold, no weapon on earth can harm me. God bless my foes, I'm out of control, teaching this God body. I'm reaching my God body, deeper than Bob Marley, racing with Ricky Bobby. We street tested and invest in a wide body, no rest. The streets are test, but we risk it and connect with Poppy Divine. But we doing time cause our lines was moving sloppy. They watch me, they wanna pop me, they watch me, I swear they watch me. I'm Islam mixed with the hustle, I'm Malcolm in a Maserati. I'm chasing elevation, frustrating Illuminati. I'm Huey leading the Panthers with answers, no one can stop me. I broke the code of the Matrix, it's basic, I'm printing copies. I'm repping for Harriet Tubman, she got me, they'll never knock me. And it's they'll never knock me. I know she got me.
Running through the street when the money don't need. Saving it some money for some food to eat. Said it's hard. Said it's hard, you know. Running through the street when the money don't need. Saving it some money for some food to eat. Said it's hard. Said it's hard, you know.
I'm on the middle step on the stairway to heaven. I'm coming as one, but guarded by 11. My whole circle driven, and all of us brethren. We using our visions as tools for manifesting. Manifesting all types of blessings. And I can't say the last time this brother seen a reverend. It's been a while since I sat down on the pew, but I can keep my head down, stay on the grind and pay my dues. Hey, I can spot a mountain, I can climb it too. I can spot a broken bridge and replace the missing screws. See a team of young kings and lace them with some jewels. I can play the game of life, hey, and never really lose. I can pull up in a photo coupe with no fumes. I can live a whole life and never see a tomb. I can find the right wife and forever be a groom. I can plant a million seeds and watch a million bloom. Stay in tune, stay in tune.
God vibes only. now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You are now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Harut, and I got my good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing? Hold on 1 second. You muted. One more time.
Can you hear me? Peace, peace, peace. I said, keeping my eyes to the sky and ears to the street. How about yourself?
I hear you, man. I'm on the same wave right here, man. I'm on the same wave right here, my brother, or whatnot. But before we get too far, I want to remind you all, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you can get notified when we are live and doing our thing or whatnot. And I will remind you all that this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Calipusha Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. Big up to y'all. Or whatnot, just definitely cranking these things out or whatnot. So definitely, thank you all for tuning in or whatnot. If you want to catch us, you can find our podcast at Cosmic Convos, COSMICCONVO. There you can find a link tree. You can get to everything that we got plugged in and everything like that. And you can also find the rest of the podcast on the Push It Forward Podcast Network at PUSHITFWD on Instagram. That's for both of them or whatnot. Hit that link tree. You can find both of us on there. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
Facebook, IG, Shekam Ra is the tag. If you want to hit me up, at my email address is caliprushaastrology@gmail.com for now.
Indeed. So, man, we're here at, we're season 4, episode 17 of whatnot, man, cranking it out. We getting close to the end of this season or whatnot, man. We've had some excellent shows, and it seems like we did a lot of shows this season for some reason. I don't know why.
It does indeed.
It don't feel like 17 episodes at all, not to me.
No, it went by real fast.
Absolutely, man. But the last episode was interesting or whatnot. A lot of people who checked it out told me that they didn't know, that Coco Chanel was, was entangled in so many different things or whatnot. What's some of the feedback you got from last episode?
I heard some good feedback. I heard they learned a lot as far as her life story. So, I definitely am proud of that episode. It takes a notion to really match and apply the knowledge to the life story, because there's so many things that you can go with, but once you see the patterns, it's laid out before you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I came across her chart some time ago, man, and because I was I forgot what I was watching. I was watching something. They mentioned Coco Chanel. I was like, man, let me look. Every time I watch a story or any type of biopic or documentary or anything like that, I just go and try to find their chart and stuff like that.
I do the same.
So I was looking at it and I was like, man, she got some interesting things going on here. So I think definitely another good case study for the catalog or whatnot. Indeed. So, before we jump into today's topic, just wanted to ask you had any announcements, anything like that you want to impart on the people before we get rolling?
No, not actually. I'm ready to get started. This is going to be one of those classic episodes.
Indeed, because it's a couple different angles from it. On one side, you can look at it and say, you can look at the, kind of the punitive side of, the topic for the day. And for those of y'all who clicked on this, you may have seen the cover art and seen the topic of the day. and what we're talking about, and there's the other side of it of just, I mean, really honestly, you can sum up, kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, especially when we get into personal, get into, individuals' charts and stuff like that, and just seeing how kind of destiny unfolds. It's just a lot of things that, I mean, a lot of us are just destined to go through. You understand what I'm saying? And it's like, to take a certain position on things like, you should have known better is, it just lacks wisdom, and understanding how people, come into this world and, how people have to develop and evolve and stuff like that, and the destiny paths that's been laid out for us, So I think, today we're going to get in a little bit of both of that. Definitely some of the things that's, kind of, been transpiring and just kind of contributing to what, just the execution of what we've been seeing. And if you if
Perfect
you hadn't
word.
seen execution, right? And we're talking about, cancel culture, right? And, things around it. It's an interesting thing. And in the description, I also said that, you may want to check out our episode that we did this season, America's Pluto Return or whatnot,
Oh yeah.
because it's some key things that was mentioned in that episode that definitely are relevant to what we're going to talk about today for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yes, indeed.
Indeed. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah, let's do this. So, um, it's an interesting time we live in. You know, as a child, I never imagined, right, um, being inside of a world that is so polarized, right? And so this versus that, and
Right.
you know, um, of course, I'm sure our parents never imagined the world in which they grew up in, and vice versa, and on back, right? The generations always get some kind of surprise or a revelation as time unfolds. But, you know, the one thing that we always can hearken to is the stars, is the heavens, because they give us a clear indication of what time it is. And that's why you always hear me say, keep my eyes to the sky, because you know if it's as above so below, I don't have to look around me to try to figure things out from a one-to-one level. I can look at it from, as they say, as the trickle down theory, right? As things happen in the heavens, we're going to see it on earth. So,
Absolutely.
you know let's just break the whole word. Let's break the words down. Let's really analyze what is being stated and put it in an astrological framework. So we have two words, right? And those two words are cancel and culture. So the first word, cancel, right? If we had to translate it, right, and let's just kind of look at what cancel means. It means to destroy, to make ineffective, right? To remove the validity of, right? To mark out or strike for deletion, right? You have to kind of stop and say, well, of all the astrological symbology and um, planet signs and so forth, what would be something that would fit along with cancellation? And ultimately, right, when you boil it down to its bare minimum, it really is the 12th house, right? Right. The 12th house is the house of cancellation. And a lot of people say eighth house. I could run with that too. But really, when you talk about being canceled, you're talking about losing something. You're talking about having to give up something which was yours or which you owned. So that is one of the ways that we look at it. We kind of translate and bring it into a framework that we can pin it into a specific quote unquote box. And so if you look at the 12th house as the house of expenditure, loss, but also self undoing. And so, when we talk about someone being canceled, we talk about something they've said, something they've done or not done that warrants them to be removed or um, alienated from social media and from society. So that's the first piece, right? And we're going to tie it all in. You'll see how it works in just a minute. But the second word, culture, in the astrological framework of things, you could fit culture into quite a few pieces. You could fit it into, in fact, it's great that we even having this discussion because the last show that you did, brother, was awesome on talking about culture, right? And
Right.
culture, versus kind of race piece. And one is tied to the other, but they also are separate components that can stand uh, by themselves. And so
Right.
culture, you know, when you run down everything, let's just talk about a little bit of definition for a minute. Let's use Webster, right, to kind of drive it home, right?
Good old
And
Webster.
culture, Merriam-Webster, right? Hey, big ups, right? Culture, number one, is the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a race, religion, or social group. B is the shared, I'll repeat, it's the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that categorizes an institution or an organization. C is the set of values, conventions, or social practices associated with a particular kind of field, activity, or a societal characteristic. Well, if you stop for just a second, they repeat several times the word social, don't they?
Right.
Right. The most social sign, right, slash house would be Aquarius, right, or the 11th house. They always run akin to one another. When I say 12th house, you could say Pisces. When I say 11th, you could also not say, but you could line it up with the sign that kind of overlays it from the Kalapurusha perspective, which is Aquarius. So we have two clear, very underlined principles that are tied to the words cancel and culture. We have the 12th house, and we also have the 11th house or the 11th sign, which is Aquarius. So, we sit back and say, well, how does that figure? How does that compute? How do you add those two together? Well, this is how. So, right now, as we stand, right, in the heavens, not on paper, right, not in a calculation, but when we look up, and of course, you can't see it with the naked eye because it's not very easily seen. You do have to have a fairly reasonable, decent telescope to see it. But the planet Neptune
Mm.
is actually in Aquarius, right? And it's going to be some interesting things we're going to unravel here very soon. Neptune, right? When we talk about Neptune, you say, well, I thought we don't use the outer planets. Of course, we've heard we use them because we've talked about Pluto, right? The Pluto return, right?
Right.
Right. Well, Neptune is also one of those outer planets that we use in a mundane way or in a from a collective framework to see how the world is being shaped, how society, how people are being affected or moved. And so, just like Pluto, it takes a long time for Neptune to make its full circle. But let's kind of sidebar for a second and talk about Neptune. Neptune takes 164 years to make one complete circuit. So, within the context of America, this is the first time Neptune has made its return to the sign of Aquarius. Right? America is only 48 years old, 49 years old. So remember, it hasn't had enough time to have two Neptune returns. It only had one. Right. So that being the case, right? Neptune is in Aquarius. And Neptune was there the first the first time Neptune was in Aquarius was it started in 1845 and it ran to 1959, right before the Civil War began. Interesting enough, right? That time
Right.
before that, there's a lot of social unrest and social change in America, especially around racism, around slavery. So, Neptune was doing his job and is doing his job now, but definitely stirring the pot as far as really pulling out the incorrect or dysfunctions in society. Well, you kind of have to go forward because if we do our math, quick math, half of 164 is 82. So we move forward 82 years and we're in the 1920s, 1927 to be exact. Now, you got to give kind of I'm going to give you a backdrop. In that time, at that specific time, right, there's a lot of things that were changing, one of which was really started right around in the 1920s when women had the right to vote. They were afforded the right to vote.
Right.
It's strange that women didn't even want to vote after it was passed because women at that time had the mindset that men did what men do and women do what women do. But of course, Susan B. Anthony and others, right, really pushed the movement forward. And so in the 1920s, not only in America, but in a lot of other Western civilizations, the right to vote was really being pushed and hearkened to,
Right.
right? Well, let's go another 82 years. Another 82 years puts us at 2009, from 1927 to 2009. This is when Neptune entered the sign of Aquarius recently. Well, if you look at cancel culture and take a gander back, prior to, I would even say 2014, 2015, you really didn't hear of cancel culture. In fact, try to see if you can put in YouTube cancel culture and put in 2010, 2011. You won't find it.
No.
I've done the research, right? I've looked. It's not there. So, given that, we're talking about a fairly recent phenomenon within the last 6 to 7 years, right? Now, granted, you got to keep in mind, right? Anytime a planet that moves takes 14 years, it takes 14 years for Neptune to move one sign. That means it's not going to jump off right away. It's going to take a little while to get the momentum going for you to feel the full effects of something that moves so slow. Just like Saturn takes 2.5 years, right? You're not going to feel it immediately. You're going to see those effects as it begins to move its way through the sign, especially right around midway to after. So 2009, 2010, we didn't see cancel culture. We didn't see, but let me tell you what we did see, right? In fact, let's just put that to the side, put that on the back burner. We'll bring that up in a minute. But 2009, 2010 were some changes, right, that were made. And some slight changes, but they were changes. So, when we talk about this, Neptune, this Neptune, what does that got to do with all of this? Neptune, in the classical, right, astrological sense of the word, co-rules Pisces, right?
Right.
Right. And so when you kind of look at from where it's standing, being co-ruling Pisces, it has some effects like Pisces. It's a higher octave of Jupiter, if you will, right? It takes Jupiter and takes it to another level on a grand scale, on a collective scale, on a universal scale. So when you look at this, you got to really step back and say, oh, remember I said canceled, right? Cancellation or being canceled is just like the 12th house or similar to Pisces, the 12th sign. And its co ruler does that business, it works in those ways. right? Neptune deals in a lot of different things that really talk about how the 12th house, right, does what it does on a holistic, on a large scale. And so when we look at it, Neptune deals in quite a few things. Number one, alienation, cancel,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Boom, right? It can turn the sacred into into the profane. And it can
Mm.
also turn the profane into that which is sacred. It can do both, depending upon how things are going. It deals with confusion,
Hmm.
delusions, right? Dreams. It deals in um, one word we're going to talk about, empathy, right? Right. Empathy. Remember that word empathy because it's going to tie in very soon. You're going to see exactly how it fits. It's amazing how, when you look to the stars, it literally tells you exactly what's going on. And just to kind of like interject and give Jyotish a big up, and I'm not saying that I'm kicking anyone in the side on the other side of the fence, but Western astrology has it where Neptune is in Pisces right now. This is not what we're seeing,
No, 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 not at all.
right?
No, not at all.
Right? Right? We're not seeing right spirituality and healing and not religion, but in the sense of spiritual practices being something that is being um, espoused or really driven home, or the world is kind of on this peaceful forgiveness type scene. That's not what's happening. We're dealing with
No.
something else, right? In fact, if we're talking about forgiveness, we definitely can't talk about cancel culture, can we? Right?
Ab- Absolutely not.
So this is how
Ain't
you
no.
know, right? You know this is, you know what time it is, right?
Right.
Um, one of the
Ain't no
things that
forgiveness going on.
oh no,
Not
none.
even
I mean,
close.
straight up down the line, right? Escapism, hallucinations,
A lot of that.
escapism, right? Hidden things, things that are hidden. This is the 12th house, remember?
Right.
Neptune is taking this on a high level. Things that are hidden, and anything that is hidden, right? There's an old saying. There's three things that will always be revealed that can only be hidden for so long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Right. Right. Buddha said that. Right. Just so you know, quote unquote Buddha. It makes um, it brings about a hysteria. Interestingly enough, right? And if you understand what hysteria is, I'm not going to get into too much of the backdrop of hysteria, but just Google the word hysteria. It actually used to be a medical definition a while ago, right?
Mm.
And it ties to women, right? It takes things. Neptune takes things and it idealizes things beyond the norms. It takes things and puts it on a very high plateau, right? It makes things unrealistic, if you will. Um, it it processes a lack of self acceptance, not being able to accept what has happened, accept reality, to face reality, like the dreams that we live in. Like when you're in a dream, it felt real, it seems real, but is it real?
Right.
One of the funny things I found in research, and I don't try to get into too much Greek culture, just because we know the Greeks, you know, they're special and a little different, but nonetheless, right? Greek culture ties this particular planet into what's called the Muses, and the Muses, right, really connects to, in our day and time, the entertainment industry, music, right? This is one of the things that Neptune really produces and brings out. The other things, of course, is sacrifice, the unconscious things that you can't remember. Hey, did that happen? Right? I thought it happened. Hey, I think I remember it did happen, right? It brings all of those unconscious things and at some point makes them conscious, just like dreams
Right.
do, right?
Right.
You know, you've ever watched a show and you watching something, and I was watching something the other day, and I'm like, this person's in my dream, right? And so I'm like, why is this person in my dream? But it's because something was there to place it into my unconscious, so that my dream can bring it out and say, hey, this is something you were paying attention to. Pay attention to it now. Rule secrets, as in hidden things. Again, things that are revealed over time. Shared feelings. This is key, right? Cancel culture is promoted and driven by shared feelings. Surrender, right? One thing was surprising that I found, that it rules victims, victimization, right? And victimizers. And guess what? There's a thin line between a victim and a victimizer. It also rules visions, right? All these things, right, really tie into, right, what we're dealing with when we talk about cancel culture. It ultimately is the instrument that is stirring the pot of what we're dealing with.
Right.
Now, the other thing we talked about was Aquarius, right? Can't leave Aquarius out the fold. We can't literally escape that, because that is part of the medium in which is being stirred. This is the pot. In fact, it's interesting that Aquarius holds a pot, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's in our logo.
It absolutely is. It's in my logo. Right? It's in the logo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
It's in the Calipurusha logo too. Yeah.
it is, right? For good reason too, right?
Right.
Um, so when we talk about Aquarius, right? What does Aquarius deal with, right? Well, first of all, it's an air sign. Air signs are intellectually oriented, right? They're mental in approach, right? It doesn't deal in emotions. So when you have a planet that deals in emotions, and remember, Pisces, which is what Neptune rules, is a water sign. Empathy is an emotion, right?
Right.
It is civilized, right? It's primarily focused on civilization itself, because air is the transmission of thought from me to you. Right? That's why when you look at the sign, a symbol, it looks like two water waves, but they also say it's air waves. Right? And remember, air is a fluid as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It deals in that which is refined. Sound like we're getting somewhere close to culture, doesn't we?
Yeah.
Deals in refinement, that which is refined. It deals in technologically oriented things, like the internet. Without the internet, no cancel culture. Right? It's a fixed sign. It deals in things that are enduring. It holds on to opinions and beliefs staunchly. Doesn't yield very easily to ideas. It's accepting ideas, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those ideas will change or alter its perception. It's fixed in nature. It holds tight to what it purviews. The next piece is that it's ruled by Saturn, and it's also co-ruled by Rahu, and in the grand scheme of things, yes, in the outer planets, Uranus. Now we're not going to get into that too much, but it would be interesting to tie the two, because they do actually connect in a major way. But we won't do that today, right? We'll maybe do that in another time.
Right.
But Saturn rules the masses, right? It's deliberate, it's deep thinking, it's restrictive, it deals with the past. It's karmic in nature, and it has oriented around responsibility. Now, Rahu also plays a role in Aquarius, and we will talk about that. But in the meantime, let's just tie it all together, right? The 11th house, 11th sign, deals with what we talk about: groups, organizations, societal structures, right? Things that are outside the box, things that are outside the box, or odd or unusual. It deals in rebellion, going against the grain, not being in the in crowd, right? One of the funny things about Aquarius is that it does, now I do look to my ancestors, and they're, partaking in this knowledge. And Hapi, which is the netter, right? Notice I didn't say God, netter of the Nile, right? Have you ever seen Hapi? You ever seen Hapi, brother? You seen what it looks like?
Yeah.
Right? A little different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like almost. I've heard some weird things on a
Me
show
too,
that
right?
I refuse to name.
Right. It
Yeah.
is a man with breasts.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about. But yeah.
It's a man with breasts. I mean, this is not something you can go look at it for yourself. Whenever you see it, it's there. That's strange, right? It's a little different. It's not something that is normal. It's a concoction, right? It's an intellectual mind trick, right? Like
Yeah.
Aquarius, right? So again, right? And also one of the things that Aquarius deals in is utopias, having this perfected existence, right? We all know that's not going to happen, but
Right.
it's something that Aquarius strives for and looks to and idealizes. So, with that being said, right, we can see clearly that this is what culture is all about. It's about groups, it's about organizations, it's about thought, it's about the ability to share those thoughts, it's about having a fixed point of view, right? Cultures have to have a fixed point of view or they wouldn't be a culture, they wouldn't stand the test of time. But when you mix the two, you get something very special, right? You get something very different in the outcome. See, 164 years ago, you didn't have the internet,
Yeah.
so it was word of mouth. You had newspapers, right? You had the first telegraph was actually created during this time, right? So technology was in its infantile seed form. Now, one of the things that we're going to mention is that at that time, the seed of women's rights and women's liberation and suffrage, women's suffrage, actually was germinated right around in 1847. That was the first kind of quote unquote, I'm going to say act, but step towards it. And it didn't, right? It didn't have enough momentum and time to take root. 82 years later, right? Which is when there's an opposition between the two. See, 82 years later is when our Uranus is opposing Uranus. Uranus entered into Leo in 1827. So from the 1820s, right, and onward, you have this opposition that's happening, and women, right, are waking up, right? The world is witnessing, and of course, I'm talking about primarily Western nations, because in nations that are still not even being formulated, I'm talking about Iran, Iraq, those kind of Middle Eastern countries, China, India, they're not at that level yet because the West is the kind of the precipice or the edge, cutting edge of what the world is, what's taking place. They're the ones that are the movers and shakers, if you will. It is what it is, right? So, what happens when you get Neptune, right, in Aquarius? Well, you have this kind of, right, emotional idealism, right, that occurs. And because Aquarius is a collective sign, right, the collective begins to pick up on these things. Remember, this is the internet we're talking about, which is all about Aquarius, right? Aquarius is, if you had to pick a sign, well, if you say the internet, you could tie it directly into Aquarius. bar none.
Right.
So, again, there's no way to have a cancel anything if you don't have the internet. So the technological aspect of Aquarius is being hit upon and played upon by these emotional airwaves. And emotional airwaves is almost kind of a catch 22. Airwaves are thought oriented, intellectual, but they're being affected by this emotional, right, output. And I'm not here to say anything is right or wrong in regards to what people are perceiving as far as their judgments. However, people's lives are being affected, right? People's minds are being affected. When you have something that is being affected, you have to say, what's the cause of the effect? And so that cause is because Neptune, like I said, it deals in things that are hidden. It's hidden, right? It's not for you or for me to know, to see, to be revealed. Well, when you have the internet, right? Right? These things will be passed upon because the emotions are being played upon, right? Whenever you turn on something, everything is emotionally driven on the internet. There's rarely things that are just emotionally neutral. So everything is being activated, being titillated by this kind of visionary, right, type of energy that the world should be this way. You should be this way. You shouldn't be that way. Well, it creates and turns a utopia into a dystopia, a dysfunctional societal norm, a dysfunctional societal, right, output and end result. Utopia is where things are perfect. Dystopia is where things are dysfunctional. This is dysfunctional, right? Now, not to say that these things can't be used for positive things, right? It can be very well, without a doubt. And if there are things that have been done in the dark, it will come to light as we are seeing. But the way it comes to light is the whole point of the conversation, the way it's being done. And if you have these, everyone's playing the victim, right? If everyone's saying, hey, you did something wrong to me, and not to say it wasn't, but if you're playing the victim instead of the victor, then the approach is always going to take on a sense of vengeance, a sense of retaliation, a sense of cancellation. Why be canceled? Yes, we all have done things, right? There's things in everyone's closet. I'm sure everyone has something that they are ashamed of or don't want to reveal or don't want in the public eye of you. But Neptune, because it calls forth the unconscious, because it releases that which is under the conscious radar, right? And it releases it in an emotional overtone, in almost like a torrential outpour, right? Let's talk about it a little deeper. So when we look at this, remember I said Aquarius, Neptune enters Aquarius as of 2009. It will be there till 2023, 14 years. It entered December of 2009. So right before 2010 hit, it entered. Now, there's a lot of things changing at this time. We have our first, quote unquote, biracial president, right? Biracial.
Right.
A mixture of what?
Black and white.
Of cultures.
Yeah, because he truly is that in a sense, because he got the skin that he's in, that is, but he was raised, in a real lily white household. 100%.
And in all truth, but his father isn't even from America.
Right.
His father's from another culture. See how it works?
Yeah.
Amazingly, the president of the United States, yes, he was elected in 2008, the precipice of when Neptune was at the end of Capricorn, and Capricorn is government, right?
Yes.
So Neptune was doing his job at the end of Capricorn 2008, because remember, he was elected at the end of 2008, wasn't
Yeah.
he? Right, so it took a year. Neptune did his bid and then entered in at the very end of the year 2009. So we have the first biracial mixture of cultures as the person running the most powerful nation in the world. That is key mark number one, right? And that president does some very different things as far as his endorsements are concerned. But we won't necessarily sidebar into that. Right? That's another conversation. But it enters in 2009. When it enters in 2009, right, there's a shift. Now, it's not, again, it's not overt. It's not something you're going to hear or feel, but you do see at least a symbol figure or something that is symbolic of that change, which again is President Barack Obama. Now, it takes a while for this to kind of take root, but one of the things, the instruments of cancel culture are these kind of small enclave groups that become bigger, right, than their original kind of idea or what they were intended to do. Um, One of the things that comes out is, um, and has come out, and I want to kind of lose track of this, but you know, things that cancel culture do is it attacks free speech,
Yeah.
right? It undermines free speech. You and I are born in a country, for the most part, that out of all the countries in the world, you can say anything and literally have no consequence. And that is the way it was intended. People can say, no, it wasn't. Well, it wouldn't have wrote it that way because free speech is free speech. They didn't say
I mean
free
that
speech with a caveat.
I mean that's the part of part of it, not all of it, of course. But I mean part of the premise of them even coming over here in the first place. You
Exactly.
know? What it
Couldn't
is, I
say
mean,
anything about the king or it's off with your head, right?
exactly.
Off with your head with if you saying something about the king, you're done, right? Take into consideration, right? Anything said about the Pope, about religion, about anything of that nature, even the Protestant movement, right, which was right the segue or the separation from from the Catholic Church. It was the first separation, right?
Right.
You still couldn't say anything about good old Martin Luther, right?
No.
So this is a different idea. This is a different approach to society. And again, that Sagittarius ascendant secures that.
Right. And that return. Because of where we at now, I mean, it's like almost yeah, it's interesting. When you look
It's
at it,
very interesting.
take a step back and look at it
It's
from
very interesting.
from a
I
sky
mean,
view.
if you have a Sagittarius ascendant as the nation's sign, the third house is Aquarius. Oh my God. Right?
Yeah.
Aquarius is the third sign, and the third house deals with
Communication.
communication, speech.
Right.
You're going to see how it ties even deeper in a minute. So, cancel culture disturbs the cultural medium and healthy norms. If there is a healthy norm, it really does. And a lot of countries are even looking at America. Of course, these countries are, not in the Western sense, but they are looking at America from a very different purview to say, you know what? Maybe that's not what we want. Maybe that maybe, maybe that's not the way to go as far as the internet or the way things are being realized as far as the growth of society is concerned.
Yeah, this is an experiment. really
Oh
is.
yeah, it really is. Um, it exacerbates things and blows things out of proportion. Is what cancel culture does.
Hmm.
It destroys the live and let live substratum of which Aquarius is holds a tenet of. If I'm different and you're different, we have a right of differences, and I
Right.
appreciate your differences because they make me who I am.
Right.
If you are like me and I'm like you and I think like you and you think like me, right? Then what's the use?
Exactly.
It creates a herd like mentality, right? Whereas you have to think like I think or feel how I feel about an issue, topic or a person. And that herd like mentality is very dangerous. It creates a mob mentality.
Right.
This is what
Right.
cancel culture is doing, right, wrong, or indifferent. Again, like I said, there are always positives. There are always positives. But the negatives, because we grow up in a culture that is unhealthy, that is unbalanced, that is not connected spiritually, not connected to nature, not connected to anything but money and the need to acquire things. A great man said, and you know who this great man is, I'm sure, right? You could treat the fish all day. You could give him medication, antibiotics, but if the water's dirty, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You have to take the water and clean the water before the fish will ultimately get well. And so the water, the medium in which we live in Aquarius, again pours out that water, right? That water, being poured out is through the internet, through technology, through the airwaves, through radio, TV, right? This is part of how we are being fed, right? In the grand universal scheme of things. And no, we're not in the age of Aquarius, we're on the cusp. But even the cusp of Aquarius is producing these things.
We haven't touched the. I mean, I was just thinking about that for a second because I know some other people that's going to think about that when they hear this, but we hadn't even scratched the surface of where the internet is taking us and where the interconnectivity is taking us. I mean, we're just touching it right now.
Just barely on the surface of things. We haven't really hit they call it the internet of everything. We haven't gotten there quite yet, but it's coming.
No, it's coming, but it ain't. It's trust me. No, you hadn't seen.
Right?
You don't want to see it probably. I think you think this is bad. Wait.
You might cancel your milk order, right? If you don't say the right thing or say the wrong thing, right?
Right.
So, this cancel culture has become unhealthy. It's become borderline dangerous.
Right.
And I'm not here to ride anyone's coat, ride down on anyone. But with the first time I began to hear that people said that the earth is flat, I was like,
Mm.
gotta be kidding me, right? This is already known. We've done, we know the earth is round.
Right.
This is part of not the cancel culture, but it's a part of the internet's ability to affect people by doing a little bit of research and a little bit of knowledge is, what they say, dangerous.
Dangerous. Ain't nothing
Cancel
worse than
culture is just that. It's a little bit
yeah.
of knowledge
Yeah.
that takes us into a tangent, an emotional fervency, a hysteria. See
Right.
how these
That word
things begin
again.
to tie in.
Right.
Right. So, to give us some good timelines here, right? To kind of pull it all together. Um, the Supreme Court, right? The law of the land, approves gay marriage as of 2015,
Right.
right? Now, I'm not saying whatever your personal preference is, that's your preference. Whatever you do in your personal quarters or in your life is your choice. But the change of culture, the change of how things function in society is a byproduct of this particular placement, being that now a male and a male, a female and a female can legally become a unit.
Right.
This is a change. This is a difference. This is something that is out of the norm. Aquarius doesn't do that by itself. It takes some other instrument, something to play upon it for these things to take place. And Neptune, right, which is that which is hidden coming to light, right?
Right.
This is what is happening. This is what we are witnessing. And from 2009 to 2015, right, that's a good chunk of change. But remember, it takes time. This is all about midway. It's midway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, this really blurs the lines of gender role integrity. And I do stand on that. And you can cancel me if you like, right? Gender role integrity is something that we can stand upon because it's something that is naturally oriented in the universe. Not to say that that homosexual behavior isn't, because that is your perception. But
Right.
life does not happen unless there's a sperm and an ovum. And it doesn't have anything to do with humans. It has something to do with nature. That means a dog, a cat, a rat, giraffe, lion, you name it, right? That is the process and the order of life. That is just the way it is. So things are oriented a lot around nakshatras in the grand scheme of things. Now, when you begin to look at Aquarius, it's a very, it's 30 degrees. But what happens in Aquarius that would change or orient this towards a different approach? And remember, Aquarius is the strangest sign of the whole zodiac. Well,
Oh yeah.
part of that sign is ruled by Rahu.
Yeah.
And there is a specific portion of Aquarius that is ultimately 100% ruled by Rahu. Now, what happens is with Aquarius, you have, two things at once. You have the past. Remember, I said Saturn deals with karma. That Saturn is old, the old time, the old ways, that old time religion, as they say, right? And then you have Rahu, which is all about invention, innovative trends, fads, right? Things that are the quote unquote future. So you have where the past and the future fuse into one, and they there's a battle, if you will. There's a struggle inside the sign for that which is to try to keep customs, keep culture, keep the tradition, and then change and modify and move within the context of what is coming up or out of people's minds, spirits, and thoughts. There's a battle there. It's called a karmic. It's a karmic backlog sign. That's why That's why it's a karmic backlog sign, because you have these backlogs. You have these old things that are battling for new things, with new things, new ideas, new ways of life, new conversations, new everything, new dress, new everything. This is where Aquarius, in the traditional sense of the word, gets its rebellion from, its rebelliousness. And also technologically, Rahu is oriented towards technology as well. For some of you didn't know, right?
Right.
So there's a struggle. There's a pulling, if you will, of these things, and also a pushing. And these pulling and pushing are happening, and Neptune comes in, the sign of the unconscious, a sign of idealistic emotions, the sign of victims and victimizers, right? Then you have this kind of, well, what happened in the past? What did you do in 1974? Right? What did you do in 1983? This is 83. This is old. It's done. You can't even remember. How many of you remember what you were doing 3 weeks ago at this time, this day, of course, you probably were watching, right?
Right. You
Cosmic
was watching
Convos,
this.
right?
Easy one.
But let's take it back a year, right?
Still watching this.
Right. Well, we were on Mondays then, right? Right. I remember we were on Mondays then, right?
Yeah.
So can't tell me. Most people can't tell me what they were doing Wednesday night, right? A year ago,
Yeah.
the exact thing. You can't
Yeah.
tell me, right? What you were doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So in that case, right? How can we say for certain? And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. These things happen. But when you dig up old things, right, and you pull them out and you try to expose them, right, for all intents and purposes, right, your memory is foggy. 12th house stuff.
Right.
It seems like a dream. Like it was like a dream. Like I think I remember it did happen, but not. And again, this is part of what is happening that we're seeing. But to give you some better context, Shasta Bishak, right, is the nakshatra that is in Aquarius or in Kumbha, which is the Jyotish term Kumbha. But Aquarius holds Shasta Bishak, right, from 10 degrees, um, no, excuse me, from 6 degrees 40 minutes
6.
to 20 degrees, 6 degrees 40 minutes to 20 degrees, right, is Shasta Bishak.
Right.
Well, Aquarius enters there, right, right around January 25th, 2014. The plot thickens, right? Right. And it retrogrades at right around 13 degrees Aquarius. This is June 2014. Shasta Bishak has some very specific meanings in that it's one of the things, it is one of the symbols of it is a circle, right? And a circle is is twofold. One, we talk about that which is inside the circle, right? And we also talk about that which is outside the circle. But that circle, right, deals in secrecy, deals in things that are not, right, meant to be known except for those that are inside the what?
Circle.
Circle. It's a very secretive nakshatra. It holds things in for the sake of, it doesn't want those Rahu type things coming to the surface. And Rahu also deals in some very unsavory sides of life as well. Right? It can deal in criminality depending on how it's placed. Right? And Aquarius is known to have two sides, a saintly side and a criminal side. The other thing that Shasta Bishak indicates is there's a kind of let's say title, but it's called the 100 Healers.
Yeah.
Right? And 100 Healers, right, is that part that deals in healing that part of us that is deeply wounded. Now, I'm not talking about your cut in your arm or a broken limb. I'm talking about things that are really deeply, right, unhealthy. Cancers, um, things that are hard to heal, right? Diseases that just don't go away. The 100 Healers have the ability to deal with it.
Right.
So this is also a sign of healing. And Neptune, right, in some sense of the word, because of his empathetic disposition, right, and because it goes deep into the subconscious, can assist or process through that nakshatra, through that part of Aquarius, in taking that secret and making that which is unconscious conscious. Right. Now, some very interesting things happen when when Neptune enters. It deals in um, and it hovers, right? Remember, well, Neptune hovers right around. It goes from 13 degrees back to 10 degrees, right? It stops at 10 and it goes back over again. Now, interestingly enough, in America's chart, the moon is placed at 7 degrees of Aquarius. Right? So when it passes over, or when it's in this sign, right, this means that women are going to play a major role, especially in this country, around what is being triggered or what is taking place. And feminism, as I stated, 164 years ago began its inception. And now we have a completely new cycle of this whole process of what femininity and feminism is bringing to the table. Not just say femininity, but feminism, because femininity
Right.
and feminism are two different things,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? So interestingly enough, K2 conjoins, right, Neptune right around Neptune right around November 2016. So I mean, I'm talking about, these are major points, major pieces, major players, major indicators of things that are taking place. And again, this is in the third house of America's chart, which deals in communication. So, right, when you and here's some strange things. So let's talk about some pieces to the puzzle. Number one, the Metoo movement, right? It actually began in it had its inception in 2006. It doesn't actually begin. Well, it takes root and grows and flourishes, but it's germinated in MySpace by a woman by the name of Tarana Burke,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Oh
And
yeah.
guess what her quote is, and her mission statement is: empowerment through empathy. Hmm. Neptune is the planet, when I say the planet of empathy, right? And empowerment, giving someone power that is victimized, that plays the victim role, that feels like they've been trampled or disrespected or disavowed, right? Again, it doesn't grow until 2015, the year after, slightly after, when Neptune enters Shasta Bishak, right? This is when the circle is now being formulated, right? The circle is now being created, a new circle, right? A new formulation of an entity that is now going to use its role of being a victim and become the victimizer. There's a thin line, folks. I tell you this truthfully. When people become victims, they have a feeling of helplessness, a feeling of, now I need someone to come save me, to come vindicate me. And when the Metoo movement takes its root and does what it does just that. Now, I'm not saying, again, right or wrong. I'm saying it is what it is. It
Right.
brings awareness to sexual harassment and sexual violence. And this is something that should be made aware. This is something that should not be swept under the rug, nor should it be downplayed or put to the side. This is the truth of the matter. And that, remember, that truth will come to light. But how you deal with the truth, how you handle those particular realities, is the ultimate end all be all. Right. The next piece, and this is something that you really don't think about until it's brought to your attention. Terry Crews. Remember
Terry
him?
Crews.
Right.
Yeah.
He was violated by a producer, entertainment, right?
Right.
In fact, the Metoo movement, Alyssa Milano, who is an entertainer and actress, was a big, um, she was a major advocate, right, of the Me Too movement, or still is, I believe. But Terry Crews, right, is also a supporter of the Me Too movement.
Right.
And Terry Crews, right, and again, the Me Too movement is founded by women, right? That moon being hit up by Neptune, there you
Mm-hmm.
go, right? Because this starts here in America. This doesn't start in England. This doesn't start in France, Germany, right? Switzerland, right? Czechoslovakia, Russia, any of the Western powers, not doesn't have anything to do with it at all. It starts right here, where that moon is in Aquarius.
Matter of fact, some people, what's his name, Roman, which he fled out to, was it switch where he fled to? I'm talking about Roman,
Roman Polanski.
yeah, Roman Polanski.
But that was old, right?
That was old,
And that
yeah.
wasn't even a Me Too. They was just going to hang him, right?
They weren't
So
going
this
to
is,
hang him. And
way, but Roman Polanski is like way before, right?
right.
Way before, but nonetheless, kind of, a similar scenario, if you will. But Terry Crews, he was violated by a producer by the name of Adam Barrett, or Bennett, excuse me. Um, he blew the whistle in 2016. See, this is what I'm talking about. 2014, 2015, 2016, right? This is when the domino effect, this is when it really hits the fan. And it's right when Neptune enters into Shasta Bishak.
And them Rahu Nakshatras ain't no joke.
I mean, Rahu
None
just,
of them. I
Rahu's
mean, but
Rahu,
you think
right?
about it, Ardra,
Ardra, right?
Swati,
Swati.
Shatavish.
Swati is the mildest of the two, right?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But Swati can be serious too, because it's Vayu, right? Ruled by Vayu, the wind, so it can scatter things, and it can scatter like the wind. Rahu, that Rahu Vayu connection literally means that they can leave at a moment's notice, and it's also deals with some other things, a blade, Hanuman. So yeah, it's the mildest of the two. It's not that mild.
No.
Another piece of this, and many of you probably don't know, there's also another one called the Time's Up movement. Right? This is a whole, I mean, like this is going down the line, right? It's called a Time's Up movement, right? And it was a charity which raised resources to support victims of sexual harassment.
Right.
Again, this victim card. Now, I'm not saying people aren't done wrong or things haven't happened. Rape is a very real part of life and existence and has been for thousands of years, right? And probably will be continue to be for thousands of years. And it's not something that's right. It is a wrong act to take someone's sexual whatever, whether it be virginity or livelihood or anything. It's wrong, right? So
Right.
I don't want people to think that I'm saying that that action is their fault, because it's not, right? But how you deal with that interaction, that act, is the ultimate realization, right? To become a victor out of something that makes you feel like a victim, that's when you take your power back. That's when you take, and a lot of these things are doing just that, is giving people a voice, is giving someone to say, hey, this is what happened to me. But again, Neptune blurs the lines, right? Neptune can create something that is an action that did happen and make you pay the price, the ultimate price, which is that cancellation. You lose your life. And I'm saying that you shouldn't have some penalties for for those actions, but again, it's how it's done. So it's founded in January of 2018, right? All of this is post 2014 when Neptune enters Shasta Bishop. It's supported by Hollywood celebrities, again, the Muses,
Mm-hmm.
right? and it's literally, it has raised a lot of money, right? Just like the Metoo movement raised a lot of money, right? There's another one, right? Maybe some of you may not like this, but hey, that's why we have free speech,
Right.
right? Black Lives Matter.
Oh yeah.
This is part of the Shasta Bishak, Neptune and Shasta Bishak paradigm. It's founded in 2013 on the heels of Trayvon Martin's murder. Murder, right? It's founded by, guess who? 3 women, 2 of which belong to the LGBTQ community, right? Interestingly enough, if you ever go to their website and read,
They've changed it recently.
oh, I know, right? Because it was a long list of things originally. They
Right.
truncated it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But even in the truncation, right?
Still the same sentiment.
It affirms the lives of Black, queer, and trans folk. Why do we have to throw the queer and trans in there? If we say Black, doesn't that include queer and trans anyway?
Right.
It does. If I say Black people, I didn't single out heterosexual Black people, did I? No.
Yeah.
I didn't single out Black people that don't have handicaps or that are not disabled. I didn't single out on those that are documented. I said Black people. But why is it that it has to have the instrument and tool of the LGBTQ banner? Because remember, Neptune creates social confusion, right? It says Black Lives Matter. It doesn't say Black gay lives or Black transsexual lives. It says Black lives. But in their manifesto, right? And it's the manifesto to me. People say it's not, but it is. Because originally, like my brother said, it was long. You could read that thing and be like lost in their whole ideology. But they truncated it, and probably because they were getting a lot of flack for what they were saying. But even still, right, it says Black lives along the gender spectrum, right? What that does is it literally undermines the power of Black people. It holds back the ability for us to have a solid voice in America. That literally, yes, we do matter. Yes, our lives have some some worth, some value. But when you begin to mix and pull different things in, right, then you have a lot of different people that want to join the bandwagon. And that is when that Neptune and Aquarius is doing its finest, when it's saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Originally, back in the 60s, when if we said Black Lives Matter back in the 60s, that's a different statement. And we did say it. We said, I'm Black and I'm what? I'm proud, right? In a different
Right.
way. So that was our Black Lives Matter back then. But at the same time, in the civil rights movement, the whole civil rights era was about equality. And it didn't single out, it didn't point out, it didn't extricate or inculcate any type of sexual denotation. It doesn't need to. When I say Black, when I say white, when I say Asian, when I say Latino, when I say whatever, it don't have to single out anybody because it's a part of the medium. It's a part of the whole. It's a given. But when you say certain things, you're saying it for a reason. And Neptune, those 3 creators, 2 of which, right, and one of the writers of this, right, in fact, Opal Tometi, right, which is the third or one, she really is kind of the face of it. If you ever look at Black Lives Matter, you'll see Opal Tometi out there. But the other two, um, Patrice Cullors and Alicia Garza, these are the other two that you don't see very often. And those are the ones that actually are the writers of the manifesto, one of which particularly Patrice Cullors. And so, um, Black Lives Matters is disruptive. It has no, whenever you see Black Lives Matters, you don't really see a lot of black people. I don't. Right? I see a
Well,
few.
most black people don't know where the leaders of Black Lives Matter come from. It's not like they come from like a grassroots kind of
Exactly.
situation. It's kind of more like a top down revolution than a bottom up revolution.
Right. Rahu.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Saturn is grassroots.
Right.
The people, the masses. Well, if they're not there, there's only one other culprit left. That's Rahu. And Rahu creates smoke and mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
He creates things that seem like one thing, but are really something else, is what I'm getting to. Right.
Right.
It makes a lot of noise with no results. Right. If it made a lot of results, Trayvon Martin should have been the first of the last of the few that are continuously their lives being taken. But we've had a plethora since then, haven't we? In fact, it
Oh,
seems
yeah.
we've had more being broadcast than before Trayvon Martin.
Right. Right.
For good reason, though. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Do you think? Yep.
Good reason, right? Because it's a part of this the airwaves being used, right, by
Right.
this Neptunian type, right, de facto service.
Right.
Right? A lot of it's identity politics, is what it is. Identity politics, gender identity politics, to be specific. Because it again goes back to their whatever your statement is around what your vision or what your mission is. That is what's going to be the outcome. That's that's who you're going to attract. Is those groups of individuals. Not to say they can't root for black people and be advocates. Do your thing. But again, it doesn't create any real substantive, any real change, right? I mean, Trayvon Martin, if Black Lives really did matter, if it really did have some power, you would see major, and I'm not talking about the entertainment industry, again, Neptunian, the Muses.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about real life individuals. Have you ever wondered why Farrakhan doesn't side with Black Lives Matter? He would be major guy to go to, right? If this was the truth. I mean, Cornel West, major people that really what's the other fella's name? Used to be heavy set. Used to have the perm. Oh, help me out.
Al Sharpton.
Al Sharpton, right? And then Al Sharpton does kind of side with them a little bit, but he's not a spokesman for them.
No.
And a lot of black community leaders really have talked about it and claim it doesn't really represent us as a whole. Right? It alienates people with negative attitudes towards law enforcement, and right. And again, I'm not wanting to do away with law enforcement. I'm sorry, y'all. Right? I understand defund the police. I get it. Right? It's not defund the police. It's defang the police. That's a difference. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You defang the police. You don't defund them. Because in the society that we live in, which the haves and the have-nots are always going to do something to have. And it's not going to be something that is upright or palatable to a moral norm. It's going to be disruptive and criminal. And when you have criminals, you have to have something in the line of, or a defense of, or in stopping the criminal behavior. Yes, you must create the clean water. You must clean the water. You must give jobs. You must educate. You must do the things that are necessary to promote healthy behavior. You have to, that's how you get rid of the have nots. But again, this is not something that's being pushed. This is not an agenda in the inner cities and in the urban areas that is saying, yes, let us give you jobs that are worthwhile. I'm not talking about McDonald's. I'm not talking about a regular, just average, barely paying your bills 9 to 5. I'm talking about something that literally gives you the ability to sustain yourself and your family.
Right.
So again, right? I'm not against I'm not for defunding the police. I'm for defanging them, taking away their military power. Right? If only one police officer shows up on a call with a gun, and that's the police officer that is watching and observing, right? And seeing the participant, he's the observer, and he can literally make decisions and judgments within a moment's notice, still just like a cop that's up front, but actually is able to do things from a different perspective, where this now takes some of the power back from the police and gives us the ability to defend ourselves and for them to be able to defend themselves, but then within a reasonable limit. Right? It's not very difficult to do things the right way. You just have to do it. You have to think about it and implement it. Defanging the police is a lot better than defunding them. And actually, defunding them would actually make more criminality if you really think about it, because the police really aren't paid that much money. They make maybe $50,000 a year at best. They make based a list of little. Think about it like this: what if we increased the pay of the teachers? Right? What if we increased the pay of the staff at the school? What if we increased programs where we pay people to facilitate, not literally pay people, not give people crumbs off of some type of um, a nonprofit type of process, really pay them, right? And have them as the advocates in the community, having teachers as advocates in the community, right? This would create a shift, right? And of course, paying police officers what they're due worth. They put their lives on the line. And there are good police officers. I know some personally, right? They're very conscious, very aware, not taking vaccines, right? Not about putting their knee on someone's neck, right? So again, it's not all, we put everything and we like to lump everything in one basket. And again, this is part of this cancel culture we're dealing with in light of how we feel now. Of course, we've always had an issue from our community's perspective with the authorities, because we know full well that a lot of them traded in the sheets for badges. We know that, right? But in reality, right, you do have to have some medium of law enforcement.
In a country like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in a
Because
country
this,
like this, you do.
you have the haves and the have-nots. If everybody had, right, criminal behavior would probably be gone, right, in a year, less than that, because then everybody has an equal playing field, if you will, right? Now, one of the last things I'm going to mention, and this is a very thin line, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because I don't want to get into any issues, right, with the providers that facilitate this glorious podcast, right? But one of the things is vaccination, right? Rights. The cancel culture is literally now in this particular area as well, right? Where people are being canceled for saying things that go against what quote unquote the scientific community has produced. And science is only as good as its counter argument. If you don't have a counter argument, you don't have science, because science is through observation, testing, trial, and error. Right? And we'll leave it at that. But just understand that a lot of people that are coming out saying various things about holistic healthcare, about possibly utilizing the body's natural immune systems in tandem with other treatments and therapies, are being ostracized and alienated and canceled. This is not what America is founded upon. Free speech, it doesn't stop right where you feel it's unsafe. It continues there, and for good reason. Because if it stops where you feel it's unsafe, right? Think about how white people or Europeans in this country would have felt, right? How we would have felt if the sit-ins, and I'm not saying that's the right approach because I very much disagree with that as well. But just for example, the sit-ins were part of that free speech, right? That would have not taken place. That none of those things would have taken place. And they did use, I mean, again, our leaders have always been canceled. Let's just get that out the way, right? Our leaders have always been canceled. So that's just a given, right? But now it's outside of the black community where it's every community is being treated in this way. And there's some clear cases, right, of examples of clear culture, um, people that have felt the wrath of it, right? It's interesting that Bill Cosby, and we've done a great show on him. You can go check that out on Cosmic Combos, I believe. What was that? Was this season? And we did a little bit last season too on Bill, right?
It was this season.
This season, and we touched on him on another season as well, faintly, right?
Episode 8.
Episode 8. Go
Okay.
check that episode out because we did pull Bill right all the way out and examined it. But it's interesting that in 2014, right? Right when Neptune was doing its retrograde motion from the 13 degrees to the 10 back to the 13 and on, that's when he began to have these issues as far as him being raked over the coals of public ridicule, right? That's when it began. He's had issues previously, but nothing took root until then.
Right.
Those victims came forth and said, hey, I woke up with a headache. I was sore. I don't remember much. It was foggy. It was 1969. All I know is I was raped. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that was right in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And I can see things within Bill's destiny that I would say it doesn't, it wouldn't, I'm not here to judge him, but I'm saying it would not be a shock if he came out and admitted some of those things to be true. Right? But it's interesting that Bill was released when Jupiter hit the, I'm not, excuse me, when Neptune hit the 29th degree of Aquarius. Isn't that interesting? Right? Neptune hit June of 2000, this year, June of this year. That's when Neptune hit, and he was released 5 days after. That is crazy, right? And it is interesting that Aquarius is his 12th house. Not to say, right, that I use it in a very personalized sense, but it is quite interesting that Neptune hit that 29th degree and boom, he's released. Meaning that
Right.
Neptune's at the edge, about to enter into a new reality, and then it's going back. Because we still have retrograde motion where Neptune's going to be in retrograde until the end of this year. Right? Andrew Cuomo, right? Not to say
Yeah.
again, I agree. I don't. Whatever infraction that man has created, and laws he's broken, I'm all for him being responsible for his actions. But again, he's canceled. Bill would never be doing another Jello pudding pop commercial again, right? He's canceled, right? Harvey Weinstein, obviously, right? Goes without saying. October 17th is when he began his travails, right? See, this is when Neptune is in the sign of Shasta Bishak, the thousand healers, the circle. Remember, these are people that are in power circles, aren't they? Right?
Yeah.
The circle is now being broken. That which is inside the circle is being brought out. So again, like I said, some of these things are positive. Some of these things need to happen to bring things to light. But at the same time, it's not what you do, but how you do it. Not to say they should not be brought up on criminal charges. But again, victims, right, and victimizers have a thin line. And who's to say those individuals weren't victimized themselves? How about treating them for their illness, treating them for the things that have happened, going back and examining, having them go through therapy, having them being going through a process where they are healed. This is not the conversation. Just incarcerate them, throw them up, throw them, lock them up, and throw away the key. That doesn't help anything,
Right.
right? He's Harvey Weinstein is paying his dues now. I mean, he'll be in there in incarceration probably for the rest of his life. Um, I mean, and again, when I say cancel, just listen to all the things that have happened. We already know Bill. Obviously, Como has stepped down, right? He's canceled. But Harvey Weinstein, here's all his cancellations. He was fired from his production company, right? He was suspended from the British Academy of Film and Television Art. He was expelled from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Again, this is the Muses at work, right? He was also resigned from the Directors Guild of America. He resigned, right? Denounced by leading figures in politics that did support him. A lot of politicians had a lot of connections with Harvey Weinstein, including some of the British government, as British aristocracy. Um, um, so, again, just talking about, he was stripped of his honorary commander of the most excellent order of the British Empire. That's another major piece, right? This was just recently, actually about a year ago. So, you know, this is just going down the line. Robert Kelly, R. Kelly, right? He's canceled all the way. He can't sell a song. I mean, he can't get a dime off of his catalog. That's serious cancellation. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not here to advocate anyone participating in pedophilia. But let me just play devil's advocate for just a brief moment. And I'm, again, not one to say that a grown man should be dealing with any form of a child. But it's strange. And I did some research, and it was just shocking to me. It was eye opening to me that the laws in Europe and England are different. I don't know if you knew, you might have known, that the laws in England state that a 16-year-old is the age of consent, meaning that 18 is not the age, it's 16 there. 18 here is 16 there. Now, these are sister cultures. These are In fact, interestingly enough, Biden came forward today in an announcement that there is a connection between Europe, Britain, and Australia. And all three countries are founded originally by the British.
Right.
But the British laws state that 16 is the age of consent. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's interesting to find that one nation views it from one way and another nation views it in another. And that these differences in laws don't change because one culture is different, or one land or one people is different from another. All these people are the same, but there's a different approach to the same problem. Now, I'm not saying R. Kelly did anything right, because child pornography is wrong as the day is long. So he's meeting his just due in the regard of violating those laws. However, right, it's interesting that the way it happened is that he was canceled. There was Lifetime shows, right? Surviving R. Kelly, right? R. Kelly, the sex scandal continues, right? R. Kelly, Sex Girls and Videotapes. These were shows that were produced, right, to create this movement that we have now against Mr. Kelly. So again, the culture using the medium of the airways, the internet, right, in creating the emotional fervor to crucify him. Now they're going back in time now to really find out about, of course, Aaliyah and her and those transactions. And this is the thing, folks, and this is what I say, right? If you do something that comes to light, right? And I think he even made a song. I did it. I don't know if you all knew about that. He made a song said that I did it. Right. He didn't say in the song what he did. He just the caveat was I did it. Now this man has made a whole series about in the closet. Right. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but if you're doing stuff like that and you putting out whole what is it? What it was a term that he used, musical something. I can't remember call it, but it's like a musical play about things that go on in a hidden realm that come to light. Well, he kind of spoke about himself in a way, because this is
Some of that stuff he wasn't really. I mean, I could remember being a young buck, man, and I mean knowing about. I mean, the stuff really wasn't done in the closet. It just was, I guess, accepted at the time to a certain degree, because it was like I mean, if you and me know it, we not in this inner circle, then
right. True.
And really, that's the truth for all of these situations. They're not truly hidden. They're just suppressed.
But remember what Neptune does.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It takes something, it blows it out of the water, right?
Yeah, but like you were saying about the circles, right? These were quote unquote secrets amongst an inner circle,
right?
People knew,
right? People knew, right? There was I think there were people that used to joke about Bill Cosby, right?
Right.
That they knew, right? And so like, though, if you're not in the inner crowd, you're not privy, right?
Right.
Well, now everybody's privy, right?
Right.
And so this just really goes to show what is happening, and when we say we look to the sky but keep our ears to the street, we're hearing all these things, but we're seeing it manifest as above, so below. And the last few pieces, is that one of the most recent ones, and I'm not, I don't listen to his music. I don't even think I can name a song that he made. I think I can only name a few. I mean, I know some R. Kelly songs, right? Like we all like, if you're I'm born in the 70s, so if you grew up, I was grown in the 90s, right? That's when R. Kelly first hit. R. Kelly was like, they call him the Pied Piper, right, of R&B. So you know some R. Kelly songs, right?
Interesting name, right?
Right, isn't it so? Right. I'm just saying, right? It's just interesting how things manifest, right?
Yeah,
but
Piper.
the baby, right?
Yeah.
Most recent, right? Kind of cancellation, and the baby said something. The baby said some things. He said them, right? And again, it's a free country.
It's just all of a sudden.
That was just
both of our internet. We must have got canceled.
Yeah, man. We was canceled. They got wind of it and cut it at the root, man. Cut it at the root.
Hey, man, them algorithms, they listening and watching.
Let's believe.
Indeed.
Better believe it.
And, but all in all, man, like the brother was saying, we're not, no disrespect to any group or anything like that. It's just explaining the nature of how, almost like, the mob mentality and different things like that are going, and kind of maybe making an overcorrection for certain, harms or different things that, that happen in past times and stuff like that, and how that relates to what's going on astrologically. So we're not really taking a position either way on either side or anything like that. It's just really just stating what's objectively happening, as a result of what's happening, in the sky or whatnot, you know.
That's it, and that's all. Right? We were
And
we were actually finishing up. We were tying it up. That was the last really piece of the puzzle. Talking about the most recent kind of example, if you will. But it's always interesting to see when you can tie these things in directly to activities that are happening on the planet, especially in your given country or a given hemisphere or say Western hemisphere of the world. And so, this is just a great example of trying to, or not trying, but um, actualizing, these particular, it's from a sidereal perspective, right?
it
Because
froze up.
again, you wouldn't get this from a Western purview, right? We definitely would have a different conversation. But with that
Indeed.
being said, right, definitely had a great 2 hour show. A lot of information covered. If you're a student of astrology, definitely go back and research a lot of these things, because you'd be surprised that and this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot of things we just can't say, right? Because we are on a social platform that honors every individual in their walk of life. So, with that being said, great show, much appreciated. Thank you for watching, paying attention, and we definitely look forward to the next one.
Indeed. So, before we get froze up again, we go ahead and close this out real quick. This episode is brought to you by Push Forward Media Group, Caliprusa Astrology. Good people over there on Patreon. We'll be back next week with another great episode, and we're out. Peace.